Hello everyone, my name is Ryan Philip, and as you can see by the title, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about hazard removal in Little Cup. Now first off, we want to talk about why hazard removal is important and why it is such an invalid thing in this kind of metagame. First of all, we're living in a balanced metagame, which means the majority of the teams will try to orient itself around either hazard stack to counteract full turn. Put up stealth rocks is almost necessary on every team simply for the nature of Little Cup, being able to prevent sturdy users, flying type hindrance, hindering Lorvesta especially, and lastly also being able to get past random sash users, which is always a good positive. It also does damage against full turn, which is especially noticeable with Lorvesta. Now why is this quite important to have? Besides being able to get past Pokemon that put up these kind of hazards like spikes, stealth rocks, which is a lot more common, it also allows you to somewhat hinder sticky webs. And sticky webs is an entire archetype in Little Cup. It is not a defined archetype, however it has a very reasonable amount of solid forms that it appears in. The majority of them will include Poniard, Ghastly, Snivy, and Surskit. That is pretty much your entire base for your team, and that's already 4 out of the 6 Pokemon. Like, that's not even a core anymore, that's just playing a team by itself that isn't finished. And being able to prevent that is pretty important. Now, this is also where the difference in Little Cup for Defog and Rapid Spin actually originates. First off, we need to keep in mind that the majority of the Rapid Spinners don't have reliable recovery. They don't get roost, and that is just a big hindrance. The other thing is that the majority of Rapid Spinners, or in this case every Rapid Spinner, is grounded, which means it simply cannot Rapid Spin away hazards without taking damage. For the flying types, of course, they take damage from stealth rocks more than the Rapid Spinners do. However, that doesn't hold it back from being able to effectively remove those hazards, as it in return is able to immunize sticky webs, which is a big thing just on its own. Now, being able to talk a little bit more about this, we are going to view what blocks Rapid Spin and Defog. So say there is nothing to block Defog, then why wouldn't I go Defog? Or if I'm having hazard stack, then I need Rapid Spin instead of Defog, because Defog removes my own hazard stack, which only on very stall oriented metagames, which none exists right now, only then it would actually make proper sense. Besides that, we also want to see if it's able to defeat the setters, like say a Drillbur and Staryu are effectively able to prevent hazards being set up on from Onyx, for example, as they are able to outspeed it, or able to one-hit KO it, or able to Rapid Spin it away without taking too much damage, or something along these lines. That is pretty much what you want to emphasize on, as that would straight up prevent them from setting up hazards and being able to take them out. So without further ado, let me actually get into it. First off, I want to talk to you about Staryu. Now, some people, and this is why I originally made this video, some people argue Drillbur is the most viable Rapid Spinner. This was about half a year ago, which at that point, I can't blame him for that, but I also can blame them for it, because it's just incorrect. Staryu, let me just start off with saying Staryu has Recover. Recover basically is reliable recovery. It works about the same way you can say as Roost would give that kind of positive. It also is a water type, which means it has a natural advantage against rock types and ground types who commonly set up hazards. The only Pokemon that could surpass it would be Laleep, Ferroseed, and maybe Poniard or Bronzor, as those can take a Scald much better. However, Poniard doesn't really like getting burned, and for Bronzong, that is actually one of the biggest worries for the Pokemon, because that puts it in range for a lot of moves to actually 2-hit KO and wither it down very fast. the Pokemon itself already isn't good, so it's not too much of an argument. However, Pokemon like Ferroseed and Lileep, those are valid Pokemon to deal with Staryu. Lileep a bit less because Ice Beam, however, it still is a valid check, considering this is the normal set. Besides being able to recover, it also has access to Rapid Spin and Nature Cure, as well as Scald. So that gives it already a massive defensive orientation as a reliable, durable Rapid Spinner for the more defensive teams. That is huge just on its own, because that means teams with Hazard Stack need this. Hazard Stack teams either orient to be fully offensive or fully defensive. Fully defensive doesn't really exist in LC. The best things you would find are semi-stall with Hazard Stack or full-on stall with Hazard Stack, and both aren't really that great because they don't take full advantage of the offensive utility that it could provide. Basically, we don't have full-on Hazard Stack offense with a defensive orientation that isn't based around Shell Smash or Dragon Dance or Bulk Up, and that's somewhat of a shame in my opinion because it doesn't really resemble anything as it is, but that shouldn't matter too much. Being able to also block out most spike setters with, again, actually no, this Pokemon actually doesn't do too well against spike setters. The majority of spike setters generally are better against it. However, if it's running a more offensive spread like this one or this one, then it can bypass it. And the reason why I'm listing these two is because this one, for example, easily bypasses a couple of things. I'm not a fan of this one specifically because it fails to do so much. Hydro Pump fails on a lot of KOs. I mean, Ice Beam fails to 2-hit KO Pumpkaboo. It doesn't 2-hit KO Chespin and stuff alike. I don't really like it because of that. I think it actually does 2-hit KO Chespin, excuse me. Defensive Staryu, offensive spinner. It does 2-hit KO Chespin, excuse me. That was actually what one of the biggest positives for running Ice Beam was for being able to stop that kind of hazard stack. And then we have the fully offensive spread, and this one actually takes more advantage of the common spin blockers, or more specifically the reliable spin blockers, because Staryu itself with this spread already beats Ghastly, which is the most offensive spin blocker. Previously it was Ghastly and Drifloon, but Drifloon has been banned, so that's not even a valid argument anymore. But being able to run just Psychic and Scald is safe. Psychic, I think 1 hit KOs every set besides Sash. And with this kind of bulky investment, it's not too much, but it's enough to balancely block attacks. This basically allows it to take hits from like Mienfoo and whatever, valid enough. It doesn't really stand too much of a chance against full-on water types like Corphish, Carvanha, Omanite after Shell Smash, stuff alike. That's not ideal. Staryu can also run Thunderbolt, and that's another thing that Staryu has going for it. Besides this defensive orientation for teams, it can go fully offensive with Life Orb and actually work extraordinarily well. At this point, it actually beats any spin blocker. 2-hit KOs any spin blocker. Offensively threatens out Pokemon more than any other Pokemon that could do something similar because of its extraordinary move pool. Hydro Pump is only usable with Nature Cure or Illuminate because it's incompatible with Athletic thanks to the Gen 3 glitch, meaning that Hydro Pump, Life Orb from 16 special attack, that is massive if you consider the fact that just Scarf Chinchu, basically not taking in Life Orb damage, is already able to wall break a lot of Pokemon with Hydro Pump. This basically wall breaks about anything. I think Munchlax takes a hit from it, I'm not fully sure. It should be able to, it's Munchlax. Life Orb, Hydro Pump, that actually has a chance to 2-hit KO, so if you get Stealth Rocks, this is a 2-hit KO with a reliable chance. The only downside you have is still your accuracy in my opinion. But yeah, basically this spread allows you to, with Thunderbolt and Ice Beam, you basically hit, with Ice Beam you 2-hit KO Pumpkaboo, and Thunderbolt you 2-hit KO Frillish. You also almost 1-hit KO Pumpkaboo Small, and you do very solid damage with Hydro Pump against every other blocker. So that's also nice. But yeah, that's Staryu. Defensive and offensive utility. It just has everything to offer you want from a spinner. The only thing it has as a downside, and that's the only thing that is a downside as being a spinner, is the fact that it's not immune to sticky webs. Because it relies a lot around its speed. Its speed is what gives it most of its utility. Having Nature Curve prevents it from being paralyzed, being toxic stalled, being burn damage too easily. It gives it a good utility as a status blocker. Having Scald also allows it to just beat freeze anyway, so that's not even too much of an argument. But that's a great thing. That's just a massive great thing, because that means it's a reliable spinner. And especially with recovery. That's just great. There's nothing else you would possibly want, except for maybe immunity to sticky webs. However, that's impossible, because then you would need levitate. And then we're gonna talk. Now we have Drillbur. Now Drillbur has been getting a lot of criticism, and I give it all the reason to be criticized. It sucks a lot in my opinion. It needs to run this kind of spreads. This is very comparable to 22 HP, 12 defense, and 11 special defense. And this is basically a bit more reverse version with 23 HP, 11 defense, and 12 special defense. Basically, this allows it to take on Magnemite very effectively. With Berry Juice, it has a form of recovery. It doesn't necessarily need to run 22 HP in my opinion, but that also works. Like running, I'm just gonna say this out loud. Running 17 attack makes absolutely zero sense in this game. There is not a single roll that I found that makes a difference. It's the same as saying I can run Modest Chinchou, and that would pretty much be redundant. For those people that still don't know, it's find me a calc. I really want to know. But Drillbur actually has a positive in being able to set up stealth rocks as well. I'm not too big of a fan. I have used this thing on too many teams. I can honestly tell you what its pros are and what its cons are, and I would very much say its physical defense is too low to be too effective in this metagame. And that's the very first thing that comes to my mind. While it has the common spread to just take on hits well enough, if you're running Eviolite with this, I just think it doesn't do its physical offense enough, because it needs Berry Juice, it just needs it. And then we have Eviolite. Yes, that deals with Poniard better, but it still doesn't deal with it. It also doesn't effectively stop physical attacking Pokemon like Onix. It actually stops Onix, don't get me wrong, but it just takes too much damage. And having Eviolite does do a bit more on special defensive department, especially walling Magnemite if it's not running Hidden Power Grass, which, honestly speaking, I've seen quite a few people opt for Hidden Power Ground over Grass. I don't really know why. There's not much ground hits over Grass, because the main thing you're gonna hit at anyway is gonna be Chinchou, and well, you hit Magnemite obviously, but that's pretty much the only thing, which isn't that great because we want Numel to be viable. But no, this Pokemon has access to Mold Breaker, which allows it to bypass 30 Pokemon, which is a great thing for all by itself. It has access to Rock Slide and Rock Tomb, allowing it to give further support or being able to take on flying types a little bit. But this is another issue with Drillbur. Its physical defense is too low to effectively even take on Fletchling, which simply says to me, okay, this Pokemon fails to do its job in that regard. It has access to Rapid Spin, obviously, and access to Stealth Rocks, giving more support, which is great. Its 17 speed is probably its biggest positive in my eyes. Its physical attack isn't too great, but it also is definitely not a negative. It has enough physical attack to both be an offensive set and a support set, and that is what you can really just see with this set. This is a Life Orb set. Being able to run Rapid Spin is just like, oh, I have no reason to run something else, then why don't I run Rapid Spin? Because the only other move you would possibly need would be Poison Jab. That's the only other move. Like, okay, you can run Shadow Claw as well, don't get me wrong. That would be able to hit the Ghost type Pokemon, but that doesn't even 2-hit KO Pumpkaboo, so that's like redundant in my opinion, except if you're running Life Orb, which, you know, I would actually opt going for Shadow Claw with Life Orb set, don't get me wrong, especially with this specific spread, because after a Sword Dance, you don't one-hit KO it because you need to be fully offensive in that regard, like support set, Pumpkaboo Super, Spin Blocker, Let me go for the rare Shadow Claw. We're gonna make this a Life Orb, and now we're gonna buff it up to +2, and it just barely misses out. So with Stealth Rocks up, that is a pretty decent chance, not reliable at all, but that's something. So if you're gonna go into a more offensive spread, you would be able to get there. Again, still, oh, it actually won a chaos at this point. Interesting. I never run this. 18 basically allows it to KO with more reliable moves like EQ. EQ get a much better roll with 18 attack, so that's much more optimal. I honestly think you wouldn't run something like Rapid Spin on this kind of on a spread that is fully offensive anyway. Like, you can opt for Shadow Claw at that point. Rapid Spin here is more like, okay, I can go fully offensive as well as giving a little bit of support if necessary. More like a last ditch effort rather than anything. And that's the same kind of idea with this kind of set, because at this point you're also not going to be able to take hits at all. But you are going to be able to offensively threaten Pokemon and sometimes even get out of a Rapid Spin if you think, oh, I don't hit enough on his team. For example, he has a Vullaby, he has a Spritzee, he has multiple options at that point, or Porygon or something, and I'm just thinking, I don't need damage right now, I just want to remove those spikes, and go for that. It also allows you to effectively take on the most common sticky web teams a bit better, but not too great for a spinner, honestly. It's just way too, it's not durable enough. Now we're gonna go into the more reliable spinners that are not these two. We have first off Tentacool. Tentacool is actually ranked B- right now, and that's surprising because I didn't fully understand why. I never really got into this Pokemon to the point where, oh, this Pokemon is so viable it needs to rise up. I never really thought about that. I don't even know if it was ranked. The big cool things about Tentacool is the fact that it's able to also absorb spikes without having to even spin. Toxic spikes are just removed thanks to poison typing, which is great. It has access to Scald, which is great all by itself. It has Liquidos, which is a unique ability, and it has this kind of special defense. Now, if you know anything about Lil Cup, you know that 20 special defense is freaking massive. It is insane. At this point, it takes on Skrelp even with Thunderbolt. I'm actually going to show you the calc, if you're running Eviolite, of course, that is. Who runs Thunderbolt anyway? It really hits just very few things like Skrelp and opposing Tentacool, and that's literally it. See Rapid Spinner, Thunderbolt 2-hit KOs with the Berry Juice set. If you're running Eviolite, that doesn't even 2-hit KO. But the only thing that Tentacool does back to Skrelp, sadly, would be using knockoff and using Scald until it gets burned, and at that point it just switches out into something else because it just needs to recover up damage, and it doesn't want to take too much from it. Like, it can take it on, don't get me wrong, but it's not the greatest thing, especially considering it's Skrelp. Its specific use is the fact that it wall breaks stuff, and being able to knock off his item is already enough because that puts it in range for many Pokemon to actually take it on at that point. For example, Kutita. But it can still switch in, that's the biggest problem. I'm not too big of a fan of this Pokemon, but it definitely has use in that regard. I think it's a bit of a downside to the fact that it doesn't have good enough typing to deal with Pokemon like Snivy. It has potential to run 17 speed, don't get me wrong, but I think its low physical defense, especially with this ability, you really think, oh, that's going to be very good for taking on Drain Punch, being able to take on Giga Drain. Yeah, sure, it's pretty useful, but it's not too great. It can take on some certain Grass-type Pokemon, but doesn't take on Snivy well enough. With Berry Juice, you're basically 50-50 and hoping it to do a big roll instead of a small roll. So you're put into enough HP to take on the next Leaf Storm, and that kind of logic is not great in my opinion, and even then you're not even that great in range in my opinion. It's a really odd one. Wall Breaker set, Tentacool. Need to be modest, and it needs to be Berry Juice instead. As you can see, this is assuming it does more damage. If it's running Timid, it's no, it needs to improve with Stealth Rock, sorry. like almost 50-50 chance, and that's just, you wanted to get a high roll at that point. Yeah. Now we're gonna talk a little bit about Kabuto. Now, I'm a big fan of Kabuto. I am a legit big fan of Kabuto right now. The reason why is because there are a lot of teams that want a high physical attack Pokemon, high physical defense Pokemon, with access to proper rock slide damage, stealth rocks, rapid spin, and being able to take on flying type Pokemon effectively. Let me just start off with saying, Staryu, Drillbur, Tentacool all failed to take on Fletchling. Having another check alongside, say, Chinchou or Barnyard to deal with Fletchling is a massive thing. Now, considering the fact this thing doesn't get trapped by Diglett is even greater. It is a freaking massive thing at this point. In fact, it is so important that it allows it to get past certain other Pokemon better than any other Rapid Spinner and any other support Pokemon. Now, there is another downside to this, and that's the fact that it wants to run so many moves. It wants to run Knockoff, Rock Slide, Aqua Jet, Rapid Spin. It wants to run all of them. And Stealth Rocks, obviously. It even wants to run Waterfall. Waterfall, I would really just only opt if you're gonna go for Swift Swim. I'm gonna run 13 speed, and that's gonna be because you're also gonna run Life Orb, and that's gonna be for the rain video, which I'm gonna prepare soon for, like very soon. No, also Eviolite, sorry. That's just an example. Don't even talk about oh, you need to change that or you need to change that. No, not yet. But basically, this Pokemon has access to certain great niche things, and especially on more balanced teams, this is something you really want to fit on teams, because it's only the Rock Slide thing that you're going to worry about. The Water type coverage is not that great, in my opinion. The only thing it really does is being able to hit basically strong priority, as well as being able to hit Diglett. That's pretty much all I need to care about it. As well as hitting ground types, I can say. I mean, it doesn't do too much, because Waterfall again is more optimal for that, but being able to run Knockoff also is just a great thing. You really just want to run either Stealth Rocks or Knockoff, depends on the support that you want. I very often just go for Stealth Rocks because I don't often have space for it. Knockoff is always great as Knockoff. It's just like Scald, it's just great. And then we're gonna go into Sandshrew, and I actually wanted this Pokemon to be C+ rank for a long time, until it got upped a little bit, I think it was. I'm very hyped for the Ice type Sandshrew. It's really just looking cool. Ice Steel. It looks cool. I don't think it will be too viable, except if it has like an Ice version of Sandshrew. In that case. But this Pokemon also has access to Rapid Spin, Knockoff, Stealth Rocks, and unlike Drillbur, it actually has big physical defense, also good attack, and horrible speed and horrible special defense altogether. It can speed creep, don't get me wrong. At this point, it can actually run a little bit more speed, like 13 speed or 14 speed, to outspeed certain specific Pokemon, but it doesn't outspeed Barnyard, which Drillbur does. But instead, it's just gonna go fully defensive and being able to take on Pokemon like Onix, Barnyard much better. Why? Because it has Earthquake. It is slower, which means it can slowly Rapid Spin, allowing it to actually beat sturdy Pokemon in that regard a little bit better, because it basically allows itself to be getting that last hit more effectively. And it's specifically that I really think it's more helpful, in my opinion, rather than hoping, oh, I hope he doesn't Rapid Spin at this point. You can also run Rock Slide, making it effectively able to take on Fletchling, but far from as reliable as Kabuto. I don't think Fletchling is a too dominant force, but it's more definitely something that teams just have to be prepared for, and just something that I over-prepare for, honestly. This basically allows it to also deal with Pokemon like Argon more effectively, and stuff alike. But I very much opted out for Kabuto often enough, because it also doesn't take on Magnemite effective enough, thanks to just its special defense is just too low. It's just too low. It can run Berry Juice, but I actually prefer Eviolite, just because Eviolite is just better on this Pokemon. Just give it Wish support from Spritzy and it should be fine. Now going into Kabuto. I mean Anorith, sorry. Anorith is an offensive Pokemon that tries to give as much support as physically possible. As you can see with the spread, it only runs Rock Blast and Knock Off as offensive moves. Knock Off is a great move as both offense and support. Rock Blast is massively powerful, especially coming from 19 physical attack. Having 18 speed allows it to outspeed the majority of Rock Satyrs and majority of Pokemon. It just happens that it has absolutely nothing besides Aqua Jet and Knock Off to hit it. Sigh. It also has the bug typing, hindering it massively from being a too reliable rabbit spinner, because at this point you can just as well go for a defogger. It also doesn't beat most spike setters, most stealth rock setters, as I just said, and pretty much that combination is what I hate this Pokemon the most for. I think it's still worth for a C+ ranking alongside Kabuto and Sandshrew, but not for this set. I would rather opt out for Swift Swim combined with Life Orb to offensively take on Pokemon than run this specific set. Just saying. Now I'm gonna move into this list and I'm gonna keep it very short. Shellder is a good set. This is the last good Pokemon to put on the list because this spread basically gives it the ability to one-hit KO, to almost one-hit KO bulky Pumpkaboo. It gives it the ability to threaten out opposing Pokemon, like Rock-type Pokemon don't like being hit with Rock Blast. Or I mean, Pokemon like Dwebble don't like being hit with Rock Blast. Pokemon like Onix doesn't like being hit with Razor Shell or Icicle Spear. You think I dislike the most about it is because Pokemon like Pawniard can actually take advantage of Razor Shell, because 50% defense lower means +2 attack for that thing, and because you're slower, I don't like that too much. But this spread basically allows it good bulky water, pure bulky water typing, which is great all by itself, as well as a decent amount of offense and a pretty decent speed tier. That's a very valid Pokemon to opt for. Very serious about that. The only thing I dislike about it is the fact that it gives me another water type weakness on more balanced teams. That's pretty much it, actually. That's pretty much the main thing that holds this set back, as well as you can run Shell Smash and you can run Choice Scarf with that Pokemon. Like, that's a big thing to opt for, so it's like, eh. Pineco. Where to start with you? You are a shit Pokemon. You only have Stealth Rocks, Spikes, and then you explode. That is pretty much your job. You only run Rapid Spin to prevent opposing hazards from being too important against your team. For example, say, I offensively use Scarf Larvesta to threaten out defoggers or something along those lines. That's pretty much it. Then we go to this. It's bad. Where to start? It has horrible attack, horrible defensive typing, has access to recovery, has access to sturdy, doesn't even run berry juice. Rock Tomb is necessary coverage to give further support, and Avalanche is the only stab it has that does any damage besides Ice Fang, I think. Yeah, Ice Fang. It's just bad. It's just bad. Then we have Beltoy. Beltoy is like Claydol in NU. In RU it was like, it's horrible. It's just horrible. Don't use it. It wanted to drop for so long, and in NU it actually has some use. In LC it doesn't have any use with Beltoy. It's just horrible. It can run Recycle Berry Juice set over Psychic, and then you're like, okay, I have nothing to hit these kind of Pokemon with, and it's like, I'm completely walled by Vullaby. You're just a bad Pokemon. We have Squirtle, outclassed by Staryu. Even with this set gives it best utility because Aqua Jet hits Pokemon that are faster. Waterfall does good damage. It can run Foresight. Yes, that is what gives it a niche. I don't need to explain this one. It's just freaking horrible. It's just horrible. This is the most viable set. I needed to look that one up because it's just a horrible Pokemon all by itself. It doesn't even have enough HP to take a hit. It doesn't run 22 HP, 12 defense, 11 special defense. It can't even run that kind of set. It's just bad. It's just really bad in my opinion. It doesn't even do fight typing or anything good. Why would you even bother with it? Defoggers. There we go. Good Pokemon. Okay, so what can I say about Vullaby? Vullaby is a massive great Pokemon. It does so many good things without even running defog. With just U-turn it does so many good things because this spread can actually opt out for U-turn over defog. You can run a more offensive spread than 18 defense. 18 defense. It has so many good positive things about it just because of its typing. But the personal greatest things in my opinion is the fact that it has access to knockoff, roost, and defog, as well as being able to take on fight type Pokemon, fungus, and a shitload of other things. It's also a great counteract against Snivy, and especially against sticky web teams, and specifically that I really opt this Pokemon out for over a Rabbit Spinner. That is the main reason I go for it. Being able to take on a special defensive set like, what was it again? Something like this. I think it actually ran like Calm Natures, but the same basically. That allowed it to deal with Abra more effectively. But yeah. Then we go to Arcan. Yeah, that's basically why I opt for Vullaby on most of my teams, simply because sticky webs is an important thing, and if you're having the option to freely go for it because you're not running Hazard Stack or don't want Stealth Rocks to be up all time, like you value your own hazard removal a bit more, go for this. It's bulky enough to take a hit even after Stealth Rock damage, so it's like just such a great Pokemon. Arcan. Where do I start with Arcan? Arcan has access to Acrobatic, Rock Slide, Earthquake, Defog, Roost, U-turn, Knockoff. It just has so much. The reason why people don't run it uncommon enough is because it fails to do the things all it wants to do. What do I mean with this? Most people actually hate something like that because that simply means you're trying to give the Pokemon too many things that it needs to do. But if you're using it on a team, you want it to be a fletchling check, as well as removing Def, as being a reliable defogger, as well as an offensive Pokemon. Just that itself shouldn't be too hard for a Pokemon to do. Actually, just look at Vullaby. Defensive Vullaby actually does all of that. It actually deals with fletchling effectively. Well, just as effectively as this Arcan spread, I should say. And that's the stupid part about it, because once fletchling uses acrobatic, it goes to +2 because you overpredict, and then it just kills Arcan. So it's like, yeah, okay, that's stupid. The same happens with Vullaby. It really does. Arcan basically has access to Stone Edge, Rock Slide, Rock Tomb, Acrobatic to deal with Fly, to deal with fight types, has access to Earthquake, allowing it to hit Barnyard, which Vullaby actually runs Heatwave as a opted form, even though don't run Heatwave. Heatwave is such a horrible move. The only thing it hits is Barnyard and Ferocity, and I don't think even it does enough damage against Barnyard with Heatwave. You would need like a bit more special defensive investment, I think, just like Stunky does. It's just bad in my opinion. Just go for U-turn if you're gonna run a more offensive spread at that point, and then you're not even a defogger anymore, so there's no point in arguing about this right now. Basically, this Pokemon has access to Earthquake, giving the ability to 2-hit KO Barnyard. It's able to outspeed Barnyard. The only thing that really holds it back as a defogger is the fact that it needs to run Berry Juice and has this ability. It takes 25% from Stealth Rocks. That is not good. Or it takes 24% you can say, because odd HP. But that's besides the point. Basically what you're gonna view is this Pokemon is often gonna give access to Stealth Rock support rather than defogging. If it does run defog, watch out for it, because the thing you want to do with this thing is just wither itself down. You want to force its switches constantly, and you want to play offensive against it, preventing it from coming in. The only thing that I can really think of that would prevent it from setting up Stealth Rocks, because this thing actually is only evolved by few Pokemon like Ferroseed and Porygon, and maybe bulky water types. Like bulky water types are a good answer, get me wrong, but it doesn't even care about change shoot next to Earthquake. basically Staryu with the balance spread can actually take on this Pokemon. Even if it has Stone Edge, it needs to hit Stone Edge, and that's the only thing holding it back from properly KOing Staryu. But that's Staryu. But that's pretty much Argon. It has a lot of things that it can go for, but it needs to run very specific spreads like Eviolite, Roost, Defog in order to effectively take on those kind of things. It needs to run Eviolite in order to deal with Fledgling. It wants to run Berry Juice because of its ability and whatever. Then we're gonna go to Stunky. Now Stunky, excuse me. Stunky is a trapper. It runs Pursuit and Sucker Punch, allowing it to trap Ghastly and Abra. It has Fire Blast in order to deal with Poniard, especially with this specific spread, because it's actually 2 with KO's Poniard, after Stealth Rocks, I think. And lastly, it has Defog, obviously. It also has Aftermath combined with a great typing, allowing it to deal effectively with Abra and Ghastly more than any other Pokemon. That is a great combination. It also has enough speed to actually become 18 speed, but nobody runs that set because it lacks defense if you were to opt for that set. It can also run Sludge Bomb, allowing it to effectively do more damage. You can also go for Explosion over Fire Blast, then you're gonna run the 14 defense spread, I think. Yeah, I think you're gonna be running the other spread then. I think that runs more attack. I don't know. I don't remember. I just always go for the spread. I don't remember that one. I think I put it in here. Stunky. Physical 14 defense. Yeah, this one. Don't go for this kind of spread. It's really unpreferable. Basically, what this gives you is a bit more speed, a bit more special defense, and that's pretty much it. You really want to run either Fire Blast or Sludge Bomb, or even Acid Spray. I've seen some people opt for that move, and it's actually decent enough. Excuse me, I was interrupted right there. But as I was saying, it gives you great utility that you really don't want to miss out on, especially with Sludge Bomb to deal with fire types. Then we have Finneon. I'm gonna say it like this: if Finneon would be immune to Sticky Webs, I would opt this Pokemon on practically any of my teams. In regard of, do I go Staryu or do I go Finneon? I would say this Pokemon would be about as viable as Vullaby if it got Levitate, or something to make it immune to Sticky Webs. Why? This Pokemon has access to the exact same utility that Staryu pretty much has, with the exception of Viable Recovery. It has access to an ability in this regard that isn't too great, but it basically allows it to effectively take on Water Spam, which is great by itself. It has access to U-turn, allowing it to pivot. It has 17 speed. It has good defense, good HP, good special defense. Not great numbers, however, because you can spread this out perfectly. This is just remaining HP, remaining special defense, but all the rest is very comparable to Staryu, actually. It runs a Hidden Power Fight just to barely miss out on the KO on Poniard, but that's still decent. Berry Juice gives it more reliable recovery, as well as Storm Drain, more special attack, allowing Scald Burns to be not even needing burn. It just does a lot of damage. It's a great Pokemon all by itself. You wouldn't expect it, basically because of its appearance. Like it's a Finneon. What do you expect? But it actually has like a lot of utility in terms of just pivoting with U-turn is such a great thing for a Defogger to be reliable. Even if it doesn't have reliable recovery, really just give it reliable recovery or the immunity to deal with Stealth Rocks, to deal with Sticky Webs, and I would just opt for this Pokemon. I legit would. It doesn't even need Hidden Power Fight. If it actually got like proper recovery, I wish it did. I just wish it did. It just looks like it should, but it doesn't, sadly. Then we have Piplup. Now this Pokemon, I'm gonna say the exact same argument. However, this Pokemon needs Roost to even be viable. It has access to Defog and Stealth Rocks. That sounds great, right? Yes. It also has Scald to burn. It just happens that that's the only thing preventing it from being absolute pure setup bait for the majority of the metagame to wall break it right after. That's all I'm gonna say. This Pokemon is a passive sitting duck. This doesn't have too much special attack, neither does Finneon basically, but Finneon has access to U-turn, which is great. Vullaby has great offensive move pool. Stunky has ability to trap. It doesn't want to deal with too many things. Piplup, it's just freaking Piplup. It's a passive sitting duck with a lot of defensive counter ability, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't do too much. That's the thing that I hate the most about it, the fact that it doesn't hit enough with just these two moves and doesn't have too much of a move pool to work effectively. If it actually had Defiant, it would be great. Then we have Rufflet. I only put this in simply for saying Rufflet can also run Defog. It's mostly outclassed by Vullaby, don't get me wrong, but it has access to superpower, so that hits Pawniard. Just go for a Rapid Spinner if you're gonna run Rufflet, or just go for Vullaby, honestly. I just want to say, just go for Vullaby. There is so much on a team, like Minfu is just so great right now, it's just ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. Like, just knock it off its item, go into Minfu, it will get knocked off, go for U-turn again, because he's probably gonna switch out at that point, and you can just keep on doing it like that because of Minfu. Majority of the teams can. You can even switch back into Vullaby at that point because it's just gonna go for either Iron Head or knockoff again, predicting a U-turn. There's just so much to note. But yeah, basically what I'm gonna say about this Pokemon is it has access to superpower, allowing it to deal with Pawniard, and that's about all that you can really opt for. Now I also forgot to say a little bit about the preventers. Basically, you have Pawniard, which is as ranked as Pawniard. If you don't know, Pawniard's viability is basically ultimate defog blocker. It just obliterates teams at +2, so that's why the sword and set is so great. It has access to Stealth Rocks, allowing it to support. It has access to Thunder Wave. It has access to Brick Break, allowing it to hit its own counterparts. It has access to Knockoff, Iron Head, and Sucker Punch to basically obliterate anything in the metagame. It has 16 speeds, literally creating the speed tiers of the metagame just by itself. We have Ghastly, the only offensive remaining spin blocker, I would say, is Ghastly. We have Pumpkaboo. It's Pumpkaboo. It's very bulky. The same counts for Frillish. These two have very similar stats. The only thing that's different is literally their special and physical split is different. For Pumpkaboo, this is a little bit of a downside because special attacking grass type is just better overall, but having access to Bullet Seed also is just such a good thing. Will-O-Wisp gives it most of its utility because being able to block Pokemon like Pawniard from just plain coming in thanks to this move pool, that's pretty good. It doesn't do too much all by itself, but it can just obliterate Pokemon with Will-O-Wisp. It can cripple them, I should say. It shouldn't say obliterate. The only thing that obliterates are stuff like Onyx because of Bullet Seed. We have Pokemon like Frillish. Oh yeah, that's another thing I forgot to note. Bullet Seed also gives it the utility to properly damage Pokemon like Staryu greatly. But yeah, Frillish, probably one of the most viable Pokemon overall, I think, as a ghost type. I think it actually is my favorite ghost type, honestly, even over Pumpkaboo. Like, I was actually the one that opted to go for this kind of spread when people were like, no, it should run this spread, you should run this spread. And I was always saying like, no, it should just run max special defense, like max special defense. And people were like, nah. And I just kept opting for it until, well, people just realized it, and many people just said, yeah, that's a good spread, Nobody claims this set, and even I don't, because why would I? It's just a spread. Many people actually ran it, and I just opted at it often enough. I think claiming sets is just such a poor thing. Like, many people can go for just a spread and just suggest, oh yeah, that's yours. Like, when people were saying, oh yeah, I designed the berry juice, the Refloon spread, nobody even knows about it at that point before it, and it was like, oh yeah, I just found it, and yeah, okay, it's my spread, nobody should. I'm not even gonna argue about that. I already made an entire video arguing about Drifloon's viability and even suggested a name drop of a guy that I actually remembered running that spread right after Drifloon, the Mischievous metagame, which was the point where it should have been more a no knowledge. And I can't even support that from that same guy. I don't have a replay, sadly, because replays didn't save from so long ago. Um, Honedge, where to start with Honedge? It's not even a proper div, not even a proper spin blocker. It doesn't block any of the A spinners, it doesn't even block any of the other spinners. The only thing it does is just being a ghost type. Like, I just wanted to list some ghost types, so it shouldn't even be there. I can just as well go for the defensive Ghastly spread, which is a very weird spread, but it works very well. Defensive Ghastly is something like, let me just show that. This is defensive Ghastly. It doesn't survive too much, but it survives the things that you don't expect it to survive, and that allows it to just deal with so much stuff. Basically, after Berry Juice has gone off, it actually takes on the knockoff from Minfu, allowing it to burn, and it can almost one-hit KO a lot of stuff that you wouldn't really expect after burn and hex damage, and it's just so good in that regard. It's a pretty cool spread. Then we have Pumpkaboo Small, and I actually think this Pokemon is still fairly viable. The reason why I don't think it's too viable is the fact that it's completely walled by Poniard, and only works viable on Sicko Epstein's, only more punishing the fact that Poniard just obliterates it. This is why I opt for Destiny Bond, because that gives it the ability to get past it by sacrificing its life. Bullet Seed does massive damage. It's the only offensive Pokemon on this list that needs support, I should say. We can also run Scarf Frillish, but that's not even a good set in my opinion. Compared to, it is a good set, don't get me wrong, but it's not like, I would opt this set as a spin blocker rather than Scarf Frillish as a spin blocker. It's not that great in my opinion. Pokemon like, well, yes, it can deal with Pokemon like Staryu, it can offensively threaten those Pokemon out, it can do all that kind of stuff, and it's actually quite good at that job, because, you know what, I should actually list it, don't get me wrong. Frillish is another Pokemon I should actually list, because it has access to Energy Ball, Water Spout if you're gonna opt for it, Water Spout, if you're gonna opt for it, has access to Trick. It has access to Shadow Ball, allowing it to good damage. It can also run hacks on this red set. But yeah, this is a pretty great thing overall. It's pretty walled by... it can also go for Ice Beam, don't get me wrong. It can also run Dazzling Gleam. It can run Sludge Wave. I don't know why you would run Sludge Wave, honestly, but except for, say, Chespin maybe, and Chinju. No, Cottonee. But yeah, that's pretty much the spin blockers and the preventers of those kind of things. So I hope this video was informative for you.